All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are live, and I want to introduce you to somebody you probably already know, Devin Townsend. Devin is an amazing musician, has many, many albums out, lots of cool projects. And I think the thing that I can relate to most and appreciate about Devin is that he doesn't only make one kind of music, he's got an open musical mind doing all kinds of amazing stuff, everything from very heavy to very mellow. And I think I was turned on to your work first when I saw you with Steve Vai many years ago, right? And you were
Man,
out there singing and doing the thing and
yeah.
even playing some trading riffs and unisons with Steve. I was like, wow, who is this guy? So, and it's been quite a journey, I know, since that point. So, hey man, welcome to my Patreon show, which is we do for the first whatever 10 or 15 minutes, we do it for everybody.
Hmm.
So on YouTube and Facebook and kind of share, and then we kind of close it down to the patrons and we let them ask questions and get a little bit closer, as they say.
Get a little bit
A
closer.
little closer.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Jordan. It's a pleasure to, it's funny, we have been kind of functioning in a similar solar system for, well, probably since the beginning of that Vi thing, at least for me. But over the past couple of months is the first time we've actually made tangible contact with each other. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate your mind, and I appreciate what you bring to this scene with your creative endeavors as well. Your Geoshred thing that you were showing me is it's pretty amazing, man. That's pretty cool.
Got to get you playing Geoshred.
Well, I
Right?
mean, if I can do it with one finger, man, I will do it. I've recently, over the past couple of years, I had to take lessons in orchestration because I started working with these symphonic elements, and my vocabulary for traditional theory was so limited that I had to start again. So I've got the keyboard set up here, but as you'll see, I had to put all the note names on it, and
Oh,
you know,
wow. Oh, there you go. Okay. That's a good
I
guide.
had to, like, I actually had to try and learn how to communicate, and maybe I'll be better at GeoShred than I anticipate.
Well, with Geoshred, you get the note names on the keys.
See, this is
Actually,
good, man.
you can
This could
have that.
work for me.
Yes, so you can
This could
see what
work.
notes, and you can put any scale you want on the playing surface as well. So if you just want to run your finger along a C harmonic minor scale, you can do it that way. So,
Well, what I started recognizing recently is there's, of course, many different vocabularies for musical expression, and it's rare that I run into people that can communicate in several. Actually, the first guy that I have had the opportunity to work with that could communicate in several languages was Keneally, where
mm.
how my mind has typically worked up to this point is, I guess it was been referred to as synesthesia, where I equate notes and emotional components to colors and shapes and things such as this, right? And there was a significant portion of my career spent thinking that that was like an aberration, like it was of no value. And that became most apparent when I tried to express my ideas for songs to arrangers or orchestrators and say, okay, well, this is supposed to be pink, or this is supposed to be blue, this is supposed to be raining, or this is supposed to be like triangular or what have you.
Right, right.
But it was cool working with Keneally because he was the first guy that was able to say, oh, it's triangular. Okay. And then he'd be able to
That's
translate that
awesome.
to
Yeah.
people. And at
Wow.
that point, I started recognizing, wow, if I could have some, even if it's a rudimentary knowledge of musical theory in a way that when I'm sitting with people, I can say, okay, well, what I'm meaning actually is this.
Okay.
It'll serve a real practical purpose, and so I have been learning, and it's actually been really fruitful.
So
Starting with Mary
that's
Had a Little Lamb sucked, though. I got to tell you.
But that's so interesting to me because, like when, which leads to, I guess, questions from me before we take questions from anybody else, because I know that you're, a really, really good guitar player and you're not just playing like blues riffs. You can play, complicated stuff and it's not necessarily, in just one tonality. You can play weird stuff. So obviously you have a really good ear. But I guess my first question is, where did all that come from? Is it all self-taught? Is it all from your ear? Do you read music? Like, like, how did you get to the place you're in?
I think there's a fundamental uh, background that was established just from my family. We're a musical family. Um,
Mm, mm,
and I think a lot of, and I've said this a number of times, and I think it bears repeating. A lot of my theoretical knowledge, in order to be able to explain myself to others,
mhm.
was when I was very young and I was introduced to musical theater. And I think there was a lot of, the Leonard Bernstein kind of West Side Story,
Right.
uh, the Jesus Christ Superstar, Paint Your Wagon, Cats, Phantom of the Opera. When I was a kid, again, I've said it a lot, but I'll say it again. It's broad strokes of emotion. It was very easy for me to understand how certain theoretical formats that were beyond me to articulate were internalized just by watching it happen on the screen. So if somebody was sad, all those 70s musicals, which in hindsight are a little hard to watch, but at the time as a kid, I was like, wow, that's clearly that emotion. And then it wasn't until I was older and I was able to start digging more into theory through high school, band, choir,
Right,
whatever,
right, right.
that
Yeah.
I was able to say, oh, okay, well, that mode, which I had with my ear being
Right,
able to
right.
figure out for myself, is a part of the arsenal now if you want to create something that is dark or sad or emotive, or and it wasn't until working with Steve that I recognized, for example, that I was drawn to things like Lydian. And it wasn't until I was older that I was able to maybe connect the dots that, well, it's interesting how much of that is suspended. And perhaps, my fear of making decisions when I was younger can be attributed to my
Mm,
like of that sort of suspending everything. It never resolves, right?
mm,
And
mm, right, right.
I do find now that as I've gotten older and as, kids and life and business and all these things that you have to be present for start to become, you have to make decisions. I find that my tendency to resolve things is hand in hand with that.
Hmm.
So, I think my formative years were spent watching musicals and listening to my parents. And then I went through high school band, high school choir, and all that. But it wasn't until recently, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, where I had to communicate with the orchestras and communicate with the choirs, that I had to start saying, okay, Dev, what is it actually that you're doing here, right?
Yeah. So
Mm.
how do you transfer to the orchestra, the choir, what you want them to play at this point?
Well, I have an intermediate that has a theoretical command over it that exceeds mine, but I've worked with several people, but I'm able to sit with them and say, okay, well, here's the ideas. Here it is. My voice is separated in Pro Tools, and here's the choral part. So however many parts it is, and I can
Right,
I can
right,
then demo it out in its
right.
entirety, but with my own voice, and then that's easy enough because I've got somebody who can do the choral orchestration that I can say, here's the Pro Tool session,
Yeah, right,
here's a
right.
backing
Just
track, and here's a click,
make
right?
it up. Right, sure.
And
Yeah.
then in terms of the orchestration, I've got a couple friends that have been very patient with me, and I've set myself up now in Logic, so I have templates of virtual instruments. I've got
Oh,
the
great.
Spitfire stuff or whatever, and then
Right.
I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
go through and make my arrangements. And I'm getting better at it. So the past cut, like Empath and the last couple of records, I was able to do the majority of that orchestration myself. But then when
Awesome.
we take it to an actual string quartet, it's in my best interest to hire somebody that can then
Right,
translate
right.
that. Right?
Sure, I get it. So when you're
Yeah.
doing all your orchestral parts and things like that, are you inputting them with a keyboard? And are you
Yes.
doing them like what, like a step time kind of thing, slowly, almost like composing them as you go? Or you're
Depends on
trying
the
to
part.
play in parts slower or
Depends
like,
on the parts. Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I don't find my ideas orchestrally and arrangement wise, even if it comes to guitar, is typically not uh, uh,
Virtuosic.
virtuosic.
Yeah,
So
right.
so I tend to be able to play most of those things, right? And when I was younger, I used to really enjoy uh, the technical parts of my guitar
Yes,
playing. And then
sure,
I
sure.
started playing with Vi, and I was like, oh, he's much better than me. so so from that point, I
Better
was
than
just like, well,
everybody.
you might as well
Yeah,
just get people that are better than you to do those things, right?
That's a good learning experience. Yeah,
Oh, it's been
right.
great. Yeah, it makes
Totally,
you lazy
totally.
though. You're just like, so I'll snap input
Right,
some
right.
guitar thing, some stupid thing,
Yeah,
and then just hire somebody that's much better than me and just be like, here's the parts.
right, right. But like if you have a fast violin part or something like that, would you just play it in with your guitar and say, I want
No,
this
no,
on violin,
I
or
would
use
I
a
would
good,
separate that.
and you wouldn't use like a guitar synthesizer or something like
No,
that
I've
to
tried,
play it
but
in?
it's much less efficient. Like I think a lot for me, I think a
Yeah.
lot of the ways that my process functions and the way that I'm able to produce as much as I do uh, is to set my studio environment up in the most efficient way possible. So, for example,
Mm,
this
mm,
setup here is
yeah.
thought out in a way that allows me to just tear through material. So I've got all my guitar sounds are preset, and I've got my template in Pro Tools set up so that each input, it's like one guitar cable that goes
Yeah.
to everything. And so if I want a clean sound, it's a certain input. If I want a heavy sound, it's a certain input.
Hmm.
You know, my main vocal mic is a certain input. It's like
Right, right.
everything is really, really fast. And
Ready
then
to
when I'm
go.
making,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, dude. And it's like
that's awesome.
the less I have to think about what I do, the faster I can just rip through it. And I tend to be able to sort of enjoy the process retroactively more so than in the moment, because in the moment it's as automatic as I can make it, and
Right.
then
Right.
we can start to deconstruct it and we can send it off to people that can articulate these things in a much more controlled way, right?
Got it, got it. So when you're
Yeah.
working on a huge project or any project and you've got complicated lines, like how much, give me an idea of how much you can bang through in a day's writing. Like do you get through like 30 seconds, or you spend time on like four measures, or
No, I can get
like
through 8 minutes. I mean, I think a lot of how I function as well is just refining things over time. So I'll start with blobs of sound, and then
mm,
I'll sort of focus on the parts that are most compelling to me,
right.
and then as that starts to come into view, that seems to sort of focus other things, and then it becomes less of a blob. And then by the time I get what I would consider a functional demo together,
Yeah.
it's at a point where I can then delegate the the writing, not the writing, but the articulation of the parts to people who are more qualified for that than that for me. But I can write
Right, right.
really fast. I think a lot of the only hang up is my stamina. So,
Yeah.
for example, at this point, you know, with moving house and the puzzle film and all these sorts of things. I started the next record. I started my new record last week, and all the effort, all the energy I had in a day went to setting the studio up. Right. So at the end of the day, I'm like, and go, and I'm like, no, I'm just gonna watch how it's made and drink tea. You know.
I hear you. Hey, we are actually going to say goodbye to our Facebook and YouTube people momentarily, and we're going to switch to my Patreon. So those of you who are out there that want to continue to enjoy our conversation and ask questions and all that, because we are going to open up to questions, come check out the Patreon. So, and thanks for joining us thus far. And actually, when we do this, we also record it, so it'll always be up there for all the patrons to go back and check out whenever they want. So,
Thank you,
yeah,
Yuko, as well for the suggestion of the tea. That is exactly the tea that I've been drinking.